Hi, everyone. I'm Tiago, and I'm 95% confident that I should have gone first. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about how we use data at Cabify to inform some product decisions. So I'm Tiago, but I'm actually here kind of representing the work of all these 18 beautiful people. This is all our product managers. And there's 3 more coming in the next month. Some of them here in Madrid and some of them in São Paulo. So our mission at Cabify is to make cities better places to live by improving how people move around. And today we are more than 20 product teams. And data at the product and engineering organization isn't an afterthought, so it's baked right into our organization. So each one of these product teams has a mission and a set of KPIs, a set of main KPIs and a set of kind of secondary KPIs that they look at and that they own and that they are responsible to kind of improve over time. And with that mission and that KPI, our roadmap is, or what we aim to be, is a list of hypotheses that we want to validate. So what we're trying to do here is to have a strong problem or strong mission-driven, problem-driven culture that is data-informed. And I'm just gonna quickly run through like how data permeates all our product definition and kind of development process. So we use data to identify problems and opportunities. So we dig through a lot of our funnels, a lot of our dashboards to find, based on those KPIs, to figure out opportunities and problems. With that, we formulate hypotheses and we set clear success criteria, and that becomes our roadmap. And then as we start like iterating through that list of hypotheses, which is our roadmap, we don't think of data as an afterthought again, right? We instrument the product because we know what the success criteria is. We know what we want to measure. So everything new that we add to the product, we instrument it. We ship the product to validate the hypothesis, and then we analyze the results, we share the results internally, and we all learn from every iteration. Or at least this is where we want to go and what we've been trying to do. So over the last 12 months, with this mindset, we ran multiple experiments on our rider critical path. So there's much more to Cabify than just the rider app, so the app you use to travel. But this is my team, and this is what I will talk to you about today. And I just want to tell you a few things we learned along the way. And this is we're really trying to build something great here, but it's by far not as sophisticated as what Damien was telling us about at Facebook, but we're trying. So just a few like learnings, really simple things, but just some stuff that we are like proud of how we are doing things and how we're like tackling these problems. So obvious always win, right? So this problem is an interesting one, right? So this is the conversion of people that try to add a credit card to people that actually manage to add a credit card. And it's a difference between Android and iOS. This is from 1 year ago. And there's like roughly 5 to 10 points of difference between the two, right? So we asked like, okay, what's going on here, right? This is the Android app, and this was the Android app back then, and the other one was the iOS app. Any guesses to what's different here and what's causing this huge difference in conversion? The language? Oh, sorry. Just think about that in the same language. Sorry. My Android is in English, my iPhone and. It's not the language, sorry. The other, Other guesses? The check, the save button, that's different. It says guardar and the check. That could be, that's a very good observation.
What's with the CVV?
Sorry, who's asking? Oh, go away, go away. He works at Cabify.
I had no idea.
This small question mark at the CVV field is like, we listen in this, like we listen to this bug fix in one of our stand-ups, and knowing that there was a difference in conversion, when I listen about this, oh, the CVV, there's a bug on iOS, the CVV doesn't show up, I say, damn it, I know where this conversion difference is coming from. Well, I didn't know, but I thought it would be this. So that button, what it did was, well, it wasn't there on iOS, but what it did, or what it was supposed to do, was to show you this very simple model that explains what the CVV is, right? And we all know what the CVV is, but apparently a lot of people don't. I mean, it's normal, right? It's CVV, what does it even mean? I don't know. So we fixed the problem. The conversion kind of leveled out and they became the same. And what we learned after like digging more through the data, actually 5% of users, even today, when they add a credit card, they somehow go and tap on that button. So they add a credit card and they have to tap on that button for some reason. So that tells us something, right? That we didn't know. It was just really, it blew our mind when we found out, right? And we continue to iterate on this view once we figure out, oh, well, if we change small things, it like makes things better. So the other thing we did was, okay, there's two fields here for the name, right? The name and the surname. And we thought, okay, what if we just collapse them and make it one? And also, oh, we have the name of the user because they signed up and they told us their name. So why don't we just pre-fill the name, which is probably the name in their credit card anyway. So that change from 2 fields to 1 field improved conversion to 80%. So from 55 to 80% with just a couple of like really stupid things. The other change that that we saw here was that, okay, with this view, only 20% of users managed to add their credit card in under 1 minute. In that other one, 50% of them managed to add it in less than 1 minute. So we're improving conversion, but we're also making our users' lives better, basically, saving them time. So that was about like just really obvious little things. The other one is about be opinionated, right? Like have strong opinions. Here, it clearly, you can tell that we don't have a strong opinion here, right? Or this design didn't have a strong opinion. Does anyone can guess like how the conversion is split between those two buttons? Like what percentage of people click on the big purple shiny button versus the other one? 80% on the purple one? Makes sense, right? It's the primary button. It's purple. The other one almost you can see. But then we look at the data and it's actually 47% on the go to the app button, whatever that means, and 50% on add a payment method, right? So this is the view you see right after you sign up to Cabify. And we look at this and we say, okay, what's going on? And our hypothesis is that, okay, people understand that they're registering to a ride-hailing app, and to be able to ride, they have to add a payment method. So even though this is like a secondary button, it doesn't even look like a button, but 50% are still clicking on that button. So it tells us something. So we said, okay, let's do what we think it's best at this point, right? This view, like at this point, we clearly didn't have an opinion of where we should send the user, right? So let them figure out. So we kind of changed perspective and say, okay, we want users to go and add a payment method. So let's just be opinionated and force that flow. So we simplified a bit. So we said, okay, after you sign up, you have to add a payment method. You can skip it at the top right corner. And then if you skip it, you will add it later. And basically when we changed that, we got 80% conversion through the add payment method funnel. But like Damon was saying, like, we don't just want people to click on that button, right? That doesn't really change anything. So what we looked at was, okay, how many people are in their first session are adding a payment method? Because that's what really matters, right? It doesn't matter if they go to the, credit card form, if they actually then hit back and go and hit the go to the app button. So we measure the end goal, which is how many people add a payment method in their first session, which allows them to write. And it increased, I cover the numbers here, but it increased by roughly 30 to 40%. And you can see the when we rolled it out in January. The other story I want to talk about is remove friction. So smaller screenshots, but this was our, back to that view, the sign up, the sign up success view, the top one was the funnel for adding a credit card, right? Like I was saying, 50% of people were tapping on adding a payment method, then they would see a list of options, how they could pay, then they would add a credit card, and then they would get to this payment method view with a success bar at the top, and that was great, right? They had the payment method, but they got stuck there, right? To go back and to ask, like to order a Cabify, they would have to tap back, close the menu, and then land on the map view. So we thought, okay, let's just remove that friction. And if users go through that funnel and add a credit card, let's just give them like an interstitial kind of state and send them to the map where they can actually do what they came here to do. And I'll tell you a bit the impact of that, but just another one. This is when people that didn't have, so 50% of people were trying to add a credit card, which means the other 50% before, they tapped on the, I'll just go back 1 second. They tapped on the go to the app button, right? So when they tap on that, they come to the map view, they order a Cabify, but they don't have a payment method. So that was the experience for users that didn't have a payment method at that point. So they would order a Cabify, it would tell them, oh, there's an error, you don't have a payment method. The error would go away, and then we would show them the list of payment method options, and then they would go and they would add their payment method. It's pretty, I mean, a lot of steps to do one thing. So we said, okay, let's just simplify. If you don't have a payment method at this point, let's just show like, how do you want to pay for your trip, and take out all the noise, remove all that friction. And this was a set of improvements that we did of just like removing these little bits of friction from the sign-up funnel on the payment method, etc. And the result was like insane. We didn't add any new functionality. We didn't do any new features, just like small transitional states and removing friction and everything. And we had this 37% increase in our critical funnel of install to first drop off, which it's like we've done the math and it's a lot of additional drop offs because of this set of improvements, which kind of can be mapped to roughly an additional $1 million of revenue every 2 months from those drop offs that we weren't losing. And we didn't have a single new feature, right? Just removing friction. Another thing, do right by our customers. So this is the, oh yeah. So here you see one problem that a lot of people complained about, which is you see a price when you're ordering a Cabify, then you do a trip, and at the end of the trip, you see another price, right? We call it the pricing consistency issues, right? And this generates a lot of frustration, right? So you see one price, you pay for something, and then at the end, you get another price. It's really frustrating, and a lot of people stop using Cabify because of this, right? It's an example of a review on the Play Store, right? oh, you said it was 3.5 and then it was 5. Forget it, right? I'm not using this app anymore. I mean, no wonder. So looking at this, we thought, okay, let's do the right thing. Let's, before I go there, just explain what's going on is when the user sees this screen, this is a dynamic marketplace. So drivers are moving around in the city. Demand goes up and down. There could be some high demand scenario that wasn't here when the user first loaded the screen. So the price can actually change from the time you see the screen to when you actually hit order. So that's what's causing some of the price inconsistencies. So we said, okay, when the user taps on that button, let's just make sure that that's the last available price for that trip. And if it isn't, let's show it to the user. Let's do the right thing. I'll say, oh, the price has changed. It's higher. Do you still want to order? So we launched this feature called Confirm Price with some heuristics based on whether there was high demand surge, or you changed, or simply because there's been a long time since you ordered and the dynamics of the marketplace have changed. And we launched this. And when we launched this, we saw that for the people that saw the confirm price feature, 10% of them didn't end up ordering a Cabify. So there's, let's say, when people saw this screen, 74% of them said, okay, I'll order still, even though the price has changed, I'll order. Then a lot of them hit back, but eventually they ordered again, right? They were just, okay, why this has changed? They come back to the order view, and then they see, okay, this is just a new price, and they end up ordering. But there's 10% of people that see that price change that never order. But 10% is a lot, right? When we're talking about a large volume, but this only happens to 1.5% of users, right? Only roughly 1% of users ever see the screen. So it's 10% of 1%, so it's really low. But even if it's really low, it's the right thing, right? Because if we don't tell users that the price has changed, what eventually happens is that they will do their trip, they will pay for it, but then they will open a support ticket, and there's a lot of operational costs involved in solving that problem afterwards. So it's better to fix the problem up front, even though our metrics go down when we launch this. And then, I really like this example. Unlock user needs through data. So this is, if you've tried Cabify, this is a kind of a typical trip. And we had a lot of feedback, or we had some qualitative feedback about people, people that couldn't see the driver's face because it's a very small icon and they couldn't see it. And there were a lot of suggestions. Why don't you make it bigger? Why don't you tap to zoom and all of that? So not knowing whether that was an actual problem, we decided to just instrument how many people were tapping on the photo, even though it didn't do anything. So we instrument that part of the product. So we had an event to track how many people were tapping on that photo of the driver. And we launched this, and suddenly, on a weekly basis and growing, there's 50,000 people that are even there was no feature, right? There was just a photo, and it didn't do anything, but there's still people tapping on that photo over and over. And if we look at the, so that was unique users. If we look at the total number of events, it's actually twice as much. So not only are people clicking, but they're tapping on it on average twice, right? So they're what's going on? So eventually, okay, we look at this, we say, okay, there's something there. People really want to see the driver's face because maybe they don't feel safe, or maybe they're just curious. They just want to make sure that they're on the right car. So we launched this very, very simple MVP to just solve that clear, obvious need that the user had. So these are all like small, very small increments here and there, small things. And I guess the question is, do these like small increments pay off? Obviously, mandatory GIF. So when we look at this, like all these experiments we've done in the kind of critical funnel of install to first drop off, over 1 year, we see 100% increase, right? Which is pretty insane. I mean, it's hard to see this level of change without doing things incrementally. So we're very, very happy about this, obviously. This means like a lot of revenue, obviously, because we're talking about big volumes, right? Because we doubled the conversion rate of the sign-up funnel. It means like twice more people like managed to ride with Cabify, which is why they downloaded the app in the first place. And because of all these little problems and frictions, they didn't manage to. Just to back 1 second. Obviously, it's not just the product changes that led to this improvement, right? Of course, there's a lot of like operational changes that happen on the ground. There's a lot of like supply demand dynamics that also contribute to this. But even when we try to isolate parts of the funnel to see, okay, are we really making an impact with the changes in the product, or is it just dynamics of the market that are leading to these improvements? And when we try to isolate things a bit, we still find like maybe not 100, but at least 80%, like 80% of that can be like attributed to small improvements that we did on the UI. So with this whole like small increments, small experiments, there's one pitfall, right? Which is, let's say this is like our goal, right? Like we want to increase conversion and we want to get to the top, right? We want to find what the top conversion is for whatever we are trying to optimize, right? And we are here in between, and we know that we can do small increments here and there and continue to like do those small increments to get to that goal. But the pitfall is that when you're doing too many small increments, small improvements, sometimes you miss the big picture, right? And you can't get to that global maxima if you keep like doing small increments over and over in the same thing, right? You need to take one step back, look at the big picture, and see where the opportunity is. So yeah, you don't want to fall prisoner to like this short-term thinking and over-optimizing for the local maxima when there's like a global maxima that you're not seeing, right? When you're trying to do this. And kind of to wrap up, to do that, you really have to stick to your vision. Obviously, be data-driven and be data-informed, but stick to the vision and think long-term to be able to get to that bigger opportunity that's right behind the mountain. So yeah, thank you.
Questions?
So Tiago, I've got two questions, and one's connecting to what Damien said. So why do you do all this? Do you have corporate goals? I mean, it's like, Tiago, you and your team, you need to increase conversion or whatever. Are there those things? I mean, you don't have to be specific about it. And the second question is about the experiment, the bad review experiments, the
confirm price.
Yeah, so people expecting a price and then getting another one. I'm pretty bad with this. I'm more used to B2B products. So, but shouldn't have you So you said that a 10% decrease of usage, losing a 10% of the 1% of users was necessary because it was a good thing to inform users, but shouldn't have you measured the disappearance or the amount of bad reviews or support tickets going down?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So to the first question, the goals. So everything that you see here, everything that we're trying to do with these experiments is obviously on our team. We have a few goals like growing the user base, increasing retention, increasing engagement, which map to the company strategy, right? And the company strategy is to, let's say, grow the ride-hailing business, right? So when we put ourselves in that position, say, how can we impact the company goals? We try to map that to where we can have impact, and we try to, depending on the priorities, we can like prioritize certain areas, right? Growth, retention, engagement. And that's how we kind of end up doing a lot of iterations on this part, because that's where we can have a lot of impact related to the company overall goals. To the confirm price feature, you're absolutely right? It's like, first we measured, does launching this feature, will it kill conversion to ordering trips, which is like one of our main goals. And here what it tells us is, okay, it does a tiny bit, but we still believe it's the right thing to do. And then the other thing we're doing, this was just launched a few weeks ago actually, is we're trying to get to that feedback to see if there was a decrease in support tickets complaining about pricing consistency. So that's the other thing we're looking at. But even if there wasn't, it would still be the right thing to do.
So one thing, thank you for the change. I was one of the support tickets because I got charged like €6 and it's initially more. I literally remember it. Yes.
That's why we fixed it.
But one thing I was thinking about in terms of the, as you were focusing on the credit card conversion in the first place, kind of how did you guys think about focusing on, that first period to say, hey, 65% seems good, but you got it up to 80% clearly, and there's a million other things that you could have tried or areas that you could have focused on.
Why did we focus on that part of, like, on the credit card view?
Yeah.
Out of everything we could be doing.
Right. Specifically, and obviously it's important, but there's a million other important.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple, right? So there's three main things that we're looking at for new users, right? Is, do they sign up? So do they create an account? And do they ride? But to ride, they need to have a payment method. So those are like the three core, like, let's say, conversions that we're looking at: sign up, adding a payment method, and ordering a Cabify. So it was maybe coincidental that let's look at this big part, because when we looked at the conversion, there was a big drop there. And that's how we came to focus a little bit on that. And then as we focused it, we kind of dig through and like found a lot of these small improvements, small like low hanging fruit that we could do. But it didn't stop there, right? So we're still, we continue to iterate. I show you the merging the two names into one name field. This week we just launched another experiment, which is just get rid of that field altogether. And we're measuring that now. Hola, Rosalba.
Hola. I was wondering, because some of your examples was like super smart decisions, but I was wondering how much of product or how much of design was those solutions. When you were talking at the this is not where the people is clicking back down. How much of that is product and how much of that is design?
Let's say finding the problem and like identifying the problem and measuring it and and finding the opportunity is mostly product, and then the solution was mostly design. We go back to our designer and we say, hey, like people they clearly want to go in this direction. They clearly want to add a payment method. How do we make this experience more focused on that flow? And the good thing is that our designers are also very kind of data driven. So they also, when they design, they share the same metrics that we share. So they're also thinking about how can I increase this core like critical path metrics. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Someone else?
Hola, Santiago.
About avoiding false positive regarding the last two keynotes.
Sorry?
Avoiding false positive on the metrics.
False positives in the testing.
Yeah.
I don't understand, sorry.
Yeah, for example, the credit card. You make the change, but maybe you add in another marketing issue that increase the...
Right.
How to avoid this false positive on the result.
Okay, so we run, like when we do these changes, we run side-by-side experiments, not like super sophisticated, but we still run side-by-side groups of people that have either one version or the other for a long time to see, so to avoid that kind of false positives. Is that what you're aiming at? Yeah,
but having a control, like...
Yeah, we have a control group and the task group, and we run it side by side to see if there's like if it's significant.
Thank you.
Hello. That's one question what Damien said. We have to notice we can spend one day to see metrics. How long you were watching metrics to see we got a problem with that credit card and we have to change it? It was 1 week or how many time was?
So it depends on the experiment, and we look to see if there's a statistically significant result. So we use amplitude, and amplitude will give us that information. So we rely on that, at least for this like tiny, like small UI experiments. Like we do a lot of other like algorithmic experiments that are much more like, I don't know if scientific is the right word, but at least we use amplitude and we wait for a long time. And Carlos can jump in if you want to. But yeah, we use amplitude and we look to see if the difference between A and B is statistically significant, which is something that amplitude gives us, which makes our lives really easy.
When you're making the change, or we were planning to do one, at what point you decide to evaluate not only the quantity, but also the quality of the people for example, for the increased price, you're having a change there and you want to test, of course, how many people are leaving at that point or coming back or whatever, but at what point you decide you have to check or to test anything else, for example, quality of the people. Maybe there's a group of people that only takes one trip for a long time and you're losing them, but you're bringing back all the people that repeats among several weeks.
That's a great question, yeah. So yeah,
sorry.
I mean, no, it's a great question, right? So because for that 10% of that 1%, we're losing that trip, right? And so how do you balance that? Like, do you not lose that trip, but have that user complain? Because the likelihood of that user coming back is really low. So I think like, I mean, in my opinion, we should definitely do the right thing with the hypothesis that if we do the right thing now, that user could potentially come back a few days later and do that first trip with the right price, with no friction and all of that. So it's like we're losing the user now, but at least we're retaining their trust. And by retaining that trust, we're kind of investing in our brand and making sure that we don't get like a negative review, we don't get a negative tweet, etc., etc. So it's a trade-off, right?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. But what I thought was, for example, you're retaining a group of people. Maybe you're losing someone because you're being sincere and everything, and that's all right because you're doing the right thing, as you said. And potentially you are doing the right thing from the start. So you won't lose anyone for saying the truth because you're asking them, are you sure you want to make this? Or are you deciding this option? And the other way around, you may lose someone forever. So that's the right thing to do either way. But maybe as a next step, you can test. I'm asking because I don't know anything about that, but you may test the quality of the users you're keeping and of the users you're losing as well. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
Maybe you're losing someone who makes a big impact, or maybe you're winning someone that really will stay forever.
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. I mean, yeah. yeah. I mean, I like the concern here is that if we lose the user, then we're like, how do we measure whether that user that we may lose would be a potentially good user in terms of a retained, like a long-term retained user with a good kind of lifetime value, right? If we mess it up, then we lose it, then we don't know if it would have been a good user.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, the other thing, if there's some more questions in the meantime, the other thing we could do is let the user ask the trip with not the right price and then fix it afterwards, right? And make it right for the user afterwards, right? So if they open a support ticket, we can be diligent and say, okay, just take the money back. Sorry about this. And let's hope you can still travel with us. But it's a bet on like making it right up front, basically.
Someone else?
Carlos.
It's almost like a closing remark very related to this. Like, I think one of the key things with being data-driven is assuming that you cannot be data-driven completely. Like, I am super aware of all the judgment calls I make every day. Like, as Tiago said, he could have changed 100 things on the sign-up experience, and he decided to go through those through pure instant experience, whatever, and data is just giving you the ideas. And you should try heavily, because I see it's happening more and more, to get into analysis paralysis that is becoming like a trend. Because yes, I could do the review thing, but like how many reviews do I have? What's the accuracy of the automatic classifier that would tell me that is about this problem? And how long it would take me to be scientifically sure that I've solved the original problem? It's probably it's not feasible to do it in any company. And then you take shortcuts. Like I was not involved in that project and I just learned about it, but it's brilliant. Like I did the right thing and I didn't mess the business. Fair enough. Because testing it for real could be forever. And then you need to know when to stop, because now we have so much data and so much tools that we could enter paralysis super soon. So it's like the most human and the most seniority. What we are looking in profiles like Tiago is the ability to make those judgment calls, because everything else everyone can do, right? Like if conversion is 80 instead of 65, I can be the product manager of do the 80, but knowing when to stop and where to focus your efforts, that's still an art, right? So just that.
More questions? Oh, the food is here. I get it.
Okay, so.
Yeah, just one more thing. So yeah, we're hiring across the board. I just highlighted product managers because that's what we're talking here today, but we're hiring across the board. So.
Yes, this is not only Cabify. We are running like already 3 companies. Is Cabify, that is the well-known here in Madrid and Latam, but we have also Movo. It's a company owned by Maxi Mobility, and we have Lana. So if you have friends or yourself, you want to join this project, we are open, and we want to be like 1,000 people in product. Enjoy the pizza beers.